Welcome to our second week of our Lenten journey. Last week, we wept at the tomb of our dear friend Lazarus, and Jesus wept with us. We rejoiced when Jesus raised Lazarus to life, and we were amazed as we removed the strips of cloth in which he was bound. Today, we will share a meal with Jesus. During this meal, Jesus does a very strange thing. He gets up and bends down and washes the feet of his disciples. Growing up Mennonite, this does not seem odd to me at all. I have heard this passage preached many times, and I've washed my fair share of feet and have had my feet washed by someone in every congregation that I've been a part of. But really, this is an odd thing for Jesus to do. It's not that washing feet was odd in Jesus's day. The people wore sandals and the roads were dusty. It was ordinary hospitality for a host to offer water to guests to wash their own feet when they entered a home. Or if the host had the means, a slave would be assigned the task of washing the guest's feet, or perhaps a child. Always someone of lower status would do the washing. So when Jesus gets up and lowers himself to his disciples' feet and begins to wash, this would have been super shocking for them to see their teacher do this menial task, slave's work. Or perhaps they were shocked at themselves or embarrassed when they realized that none of them had thought to see to it that Jesus's feet were washed, or to wash Jesus's feet themselves. So as I was preparing for today's contemplation, I came across an article with a title that shocked me. It was called "The God Who Condescends: Leadership in the Gospel of John" by Lauren Sierra, published in the April 2021 edition of Christian Education Journal. Of course, I stopped scrolling and clicked on the link. Condescends? Isn't that a derogatory word, meaning to show feelings of superiority or be patronizing? Why would you use that word to describe God and God's leadership? I learned from the article that the word condescend originally had positive connotations. The word comes from the Latin com, meaning with or together, and descendere or something like that, which means to descend or climb down. In Middle English, the word meant to voluntarily waive ceremony or dignity proper to one's superior position or rank, and willingly assume equality with inferiors. It meant to bow down, to stoop voluntarily and graciously. This is not a negative characteristic. This is what Jesus did all throughout the book of John, and it's what he did when he washed his disciples' feet. And this is what Jesus calls his disciples, what he calls us to do in the second half of today's passage. So I think there's much here for us to ponder today. So let's go ahead and dive in. Before I read the passage, I will light my candle as a symbol of God's presence here with us today. May we be open to the graces of this Lenten season. John 13, 1-17. Now, before the festival of the Passover, Jesus knew that his hour had come to depart from the world and go to the Father. Having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end. The devil had already put it in the heart of Judas, son of Simon Iscariot, to betray him. And during supper, Jesus, knowing that the Father had given all things into his hands, and that he had come from God and was going to God, got up from the table, took off his outer robe, and tied a towel around himself. Then he poured water into a basin and began to wash the disciples' feet and to wipe them with the towel that was tied around him. He came to Simon Peter, who said to him, "Lord, are you going to wash my feet?" Jesus answered, "You do not know what I am doing, but later you will understand." Peter said to him, "You will never wash my feet." Jesus answered, "Unless I wash you, you have no share with me." Simon Peter said to him, "Lord, not my feet only, but also my hands and my head." Jesus said to him, "One who is bathed does not need to wash except for the feet, but is entirely clean, and you are clean, though not all of you." For he knew who was to betray him. For this reason, he said, "Not all of you are clean." After he had washed their feet, had put on his robe, and had returned to the table, he said to them, "Do you know what I have done to you? You call me teacher and Lord, and you are right, for that is what I am. So if I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also ought to wash one another's feet. For I have set you an example that you also should do as I have done to you. Very truly, I tell you, servants are not greater than their master, nor are messengers greater than the one who sent them. If you know these things, you are blessed if you do them." The word of the Lord. So before I guide you through the passage with questions and pauses, let us take a couple of centering breaths, breathing in God's Spirit and breathing out anything that distracts you from being in the presence of God. May we be open to the graces of this Lenten season. I invite you to enter the story. You are sitting in a room with Jesus and those who follow him. Look around you. What does the room look like? Is there any light coming through the windows, or is it already dark outside? What sounds do you hear coming from the street outside? Jerusalem is filled with thousands of people from all over the world preparing to celebrate the Passover. What furniture do you see? A table with couches, Anything else? As you take your seat at the table, look at the food that is spread before you. As you breathe in the aromas, does your stomach growl in anticipation of the meal? Look at the people who are in the room with you. Now, before the festival of the Passover, Jesus knew that his hour had come to depart from this world and go to the Father. Having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the very end. Can you see this love as Jesus interacts with you and the others gathered here? Is there any hint on Jesus's face that he knows he will soon depart from this world? The devil had already put it into the heart of Judas, son of Simon Iscariot, to betray Jesus. Look at your companion, Judas. How do you feel towards him? Is he a close friend? Does he seem different to you this evening? And during supper, Jesus, knowing that the Father had given all things into his hands, and that he had come from God and was going to God, got up from the table, took off his outer robe, and tied a towel around himself. As you see Jesus doing this, what are you thinking? What are you feeling? Why is he taking off his robe and tying a towel around himself? He looks like a slave. Why would Jesus willingly take on such a lowly position? What is he doing? Look at the others around the table. How are they responding to Jesus's odd behavior? Then he poured water into a basin and began to wash the disciples' feet and to wipe them with the towel that was tied around him. Watch closely at Jesus's actions. He is stooping down, lowering himself, condescending to the position of a slave as he pours water over your friend's feet. Look down at your own dusty feet. It is the middle of the meal. Why are your feet still dirty? How did everyone here forget to take care of this routine task when you all entered the room? Can you see Jesus's feet? Are they dirty? What emotions are you feeling? Jesus came to Simon Peter, who said to him, "Lord, are you going to wash my feet?" What are you thinking as Simon Peter questions Jesus? Jesus answered, "You do not know now what I am doing, but later you will understand." What expression does Jesus have on his face as he says this? Peter said to him, "You will never wash my feet." What emotions are you feeling as you watch Peter refuse? Jesus answered, "Unless I wash you, you have no share with me." Simon Peter said to him, "Lord, not my feet only, but also my hands and my head." In typical Simon Peter fashion, he is dramatic and enthusiastic. What are you feeling? Jesus said to him, "One who has bathed does not need to wash, except for the feet, but is entirely clean, and you are clean, though not all of you." For he knew who was to betray him. For this reason, he said, "Not all of you are clean." After Jesus says this, he washes Simon Peter's feet. Then he moves on to wash Judas's feet. Now it is your turn. As Jesus's eyes meet yours, what are you feeling? What does his touch feel like as he gently takes your feet in his hands? Feel the cleansing water that he pours over your feet to wash the dirt off your feet. Do either of you speak? As Jesus takes the towel from his waist to dry your feet, do you exchange smiles? Perhaps you see a tear in his eye or feel one running down your own cheek. When he is finished, do you embrace? If so, how does this feel? If not, why not? As Jesus continues around the room, washing the feet of your friends, what thoughts are going through your mind? What are you feeling? After Jesus had washed their feet, had put on his robe, and had returned to the table, he said to them, "Do you know what I have done to you?" What is your response to this question? Jesus continues, you call me teacher and Lord, and you are right, for that is what I am. So if I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also ought to wash one another's feet. For I have set you an example that you also should do as I have done to you. How do you respond to this? Take a moment to think about what these words mean for you personally. Jesus concludes, very truly, I tell you, servants are not greater than their master, nor are messengers greater than the one who sent them. If you know these things, you are blessed if you do them. As the meal continues, what conversations do you have with your companions? Do you talk about what just happened, or perhaps you eat in silence, each pondering this very odd experience? I invite you to make your way over to Jesus now. Spend the next 10 minutes of silence and a conversation with him about this experience. During this meal, when did you experience joy? When did you feel uneasy? What might Jesus say to you about your life as it relates to this story? When I sound my chimes, this will indicate that you have about a minute to wrap up your conversation with Jesus, after which time I will end the silence with a psalm. If you're doing this contemplation later with the recording, go ahead and hit pause now so that you can spend as much time in silent contemplation as you feel you need. Then restart the video when you're ready to hear the psalm. I will close our silence with Psalm 51, 1-2 and 7-12. Have mercy on me, O God, according to your loving kindness. In your great compassion, blot out my offenses. Wash me through and through from my wickedness and cleanse me from my sin. Purge me from my sin and I shall be pure. Wash me and I shall be clean indeed. Make me hear of joy and gladness, that the body you have broken may rejoice. Hide your face from my sins and blot out all my iniquities. Create in me a clean heart, O God, and renew a right spirit within me. Cast me not away from your presence, and take not your Holy Spirit from me. Give me the joy of your saving help again, and sustain me with your bountiful Spirit. Amen.